Welcome students. This session is for BA second year English Literature, paper second, that is prose and fiction. In your prose section, you have essay by G.K. Chesterton on the pleasures of no longer being very young. In my previous session, I have already talked about G.K. Chesterton as a writer, and you have now become familiar with Chesterton's life, his style of writing, and also a little overview of this essay. So, this session will be dealing with on the pleasures of no longer being very young in detail. Before coming to the text, let me introduce you to the theme of this essay. This essay discusses the eternal conflict between old and the new form, a realistic and practical point of view. So the thing that is important over here is the realistic and practical approach of G.K. Chesterton towards this conflict of old age and youth age. Usually it is done by the other authors in a very sentimental manner, but here in this essay you are going to find that J.K. Chesterton deals this topic very realistically and practically. He presents a practical advantage of getting old. The tone is scholarly as the writer proves his arguments with classical, biblical, historical and literary allusions. So in order to prove his point, Chesterton draws straight from classical reference. He gives classical references, biblical references, and he draws from history, even from literature, to prove his point that to become old is advantageous. He points out this through many funny details of common life. As you know, Chesterton is famous for connecting his issues to very common and simple life of human beings. So in this essay also, he gives a lot of funny details. There is a touch of humor, and he proves his point of advantages of old age by giving references from common life. Paradox and wordplay bring gentle humor to the essay. So we also find the use of paradox and wordplay. Finally, this essay can be understood as a defense of the gravity and validity of the old. So somewhere you feel that author is writing in favor of old age in comparison to youth age. So it's in a defense and it validates the old age. Now coming to the text of the essay, this essay starts in a very interesting manner where Chesterton writes that there are advantages in the advance through middle age into later life which are very seldom stated in a sensible way. Generally they are stated in a sentimental way. So others who have written on the same subject, they have usually written about old age in a very sentimental manner, whereas when we see Chesterton writing about the advancement from middle age into later life, that is from the middle age into the old age, he states it in a very sensible manner, in a very practical manner. This is the difference between his dealing with the subject and the other authors who have written about old age in their own works. The general suggestion that all old men are equipped with beautiful snowy beards like Father Christmas and rejoice in unfathomable wisdom like Nestor. The general idea that comes from the other authors who are writing about old ages, that the advantage they are about to give about getting old is that old people are equipped with snowy beards like Father Christmas. So they grow beautiful beard like Father Christmas and rejoice in unfathomable wisdom like Nestor. And they also say that as people advance in their age, they become wise like King Nestor, and Nestor was a wise king of Pylos according to Greek mythology. So here Chesterton draws from Greek mythology in order to prove his point. These two advantages which other writers write about old age, they rather look like disadvantages of old age to the young people. So he says that all this has caused the young people to be skeptical about the real advantages of old people. So when they see that the only advantage of growing old is to have a beard, a snowy beard, a white beard, like Father Christmas, and becoming wise like King Nestor, these young people, they really feel doubtful if this is advantages of being old or it is a disadvantage for them. And the true statement of those advantages sounds like a paradox. So it sounds absolutely opposite. The advantage of being old sounds like a disadvantage to the young people. I would not say that old men grow wise, for men never grow wise. Uh, Chesterton, very practically, he writes that old men never grow wise because growing wise has got nothing to do with the advancement of years. And even in old people, you can see attractive childishness and a lot of cheerfulness and innocence. So, wisdom has got nothing to do with old age, and one can find examples of old men uh, having attractive childishness and cheerful innocence. So, this is the way that Chesterton is writing about old age, where the advantage of old age, where you can see that even old people enjoy attractive childishness and they are happy and they are innocent. Chesterton further writes that elderly people are often much more romantic than younger people and sometimes even more adventurous, having begun to realize how many things they do not know. So he feels that old age is a time of realization where you come to know that there are so many things in the world which one still needs to know. And old age is the best time when a person realizes his ignorance, what all he has learned in life and what all remains to be known. This makes old people more adventurous. They have that risk-taking capacity, and they are much more romantic in the way that they are much more imaginative than young people. And sometimes he says even more adventurous. That is, they take risks because they realize that there are so many things in their life which they still need to know and they need to achieve. It's a true proverb, no doubt, which says, "There is no fool like an old fool." So, all those things that were serious to older people when they were younger, they are able to laugh at when they grow old, because when a person reaches that milestone of old age and he reflects upon life, he sees it in a very different manner. And this is the reason why Chesterton gives this proverb that there is no fool like an old fool, and perhaps there is no fool who is half so happy in his old fool paradise. So, through this proverb, maybe Chesterton is trying to suggest that older people, they love to live in their own fool paradise, because paradise is a place where they have their freedom to live with their own beliefs, which they have cultivated all through their life, and they know that their beliefs is not going to harm anyone else. So it is seen that old people are absolutely comfortable in their own space, where they are happy and they are contented with their own beliefs. But however this may be, it is true that advantages of maturity are not those which are generally urged, even in praise of it. Chesterton tries to conclude this thought, or you can say this argument, by saying that these are not exactly the things that people want when they grow old. And if they really want and they praise old age because of all these things, then when they are truly urged, they sound like almost a comic contradiction. And there is a touch of humor, and it's absolutely contradictory, because these advantages, these things which appear as advantages, basically look like a disadvantage to the people if they even try to urge for these things when for getting old, or if they urge for being old in comparison to being young. Chesterton further gives an example and writes that, for instance, one pleasure attached to growing older is that many things seem to be growing younger, growing fresher, and more lively than we once supposed them to be. So, this is the advantage that he talks about, that when a person grows old, one is able to look at this world as growing younger because one has achieved an old age. So, for him, the rest of the world appears to be much younger, much fresh, and more lively than once he supposed them to be. Because when one is youth, the newness is all around, and that newness is the only thing that they have seen. It's only when one grows old one is able to see the change and contrast around, and the perception of the old person is looking at the world in a much younger and much fresher and much livelier than when a person himself is a youth in the youth age. We begin to see significance, or in other words, to see life in large number of traditions, institutions, maxims, and codes of manner that seem in our first days to be dead. Chesterton suggests through this that there are so many things that one gets kindled through and one gets acquainted through with the passage of years, and all those proverbs and the traditions they benefit to older people, and they appear quite significant to them because proverbs have a tradition, and a tradition does have a degree of truth involved in it. So the benefits of these proverbs, the benefits of these traditions, which in the first of the years, which at the youth time appears as dead, as meaningless, acquires a meaning and acquires an importance when one grows old. A young man grows up in a world that often seems to him intolerably old. And as a contrast, Chesterton gives that for old people, the world looks more young, more lively, and more fresh. But in contrast to this, when a young man looks at the world, he grows up in a world that often seems to him intolerably old, because there are so many things for a young person which he is not able to understand, and he has no idea what these old things might have been that are all around him. He grows up among the proverbs and precepts that appear to be quite stiff and senseless. So this is the thing, that the young people, they are absolutely in conflict with themselves, and they don't have that ready information at hand that can allow them to understand what exactly these proverbs and these precepts mean. So all these traditions and these proverbs, they appear to them senseless. He seems to be stuffed with stale things, to be given the stones of death instead of the bread of life. So all these things, they show that young people in reality, they have no understanding in the youthful age about these traditions and what it exactly means to live. So they feel that all the things that they are surrounded with are the stones of death, and they are fed with the dust of the dead past, that is the tradition or the past, which appears to them as no meaning, and they have absolutely no idea what they stand for. To live in a town of tombs, and they feel as if they are living among those dead things, among those meaningless things, and they find absolutely no meaning what their life is all about. It is a very natural mistake, but it's a mistake. And this happens with every generation, and it happens very naturally. It's a mistake, but Chesterton says that this mistake is inevitable, and it's very natural that every generation, every younger generation feels like this. And as they slowly advance in their life and they grow old, only then they are able to realize the freshness and newness of things, as well as the meanings that why traditions have been carried all through these years, and what exactly is the meaning of life. If we analyze these first three paragraphs of essay, we come to know that in these paragraphs, Chesterton is suggesting advantage of old age that does not appear to be defeated in any way. So he gives his logic and arguments in favor of growing old, and he proves this point quite comfortably and in a very strong manner before the readers, which makes us connect to the logic that he's giving in favor of old age, something which is often the case when it comes to an older person, because growing old is attached to every human being. So one realizes that whatever Chesterton is writing as an advantage of old age is quite true and real in itself. Instead, they are quite happy to find a proverb for their predicament and to believe it. So this is the advantage that he keeps on talking about in his essay, that old people are able to find meaning of all proverbs and maxims because they have lived it and they have seen them becoming real in their life, and they have a reason, therefore, to believe in it. So some critics might suggest that Chesterton is out of touch with the realities of youth. He still nonetheless projects happier images of old men than a younger man or woman. At times critics, they talk about this essay in a way that maybe Chesterton is not in touch with the realities of youth. He is not at all writing in favor of youth. But we see that in this essay, Chesterton does present a happier and a real picture of old people in comparison to young man or woman. So this is quite different and interesting in itself. Proverbs also act to serve as wisdom, because through proverbs people become wise. They know what life exactly means. However, the problem is that those who do not understand proverb, that is youth age, have no value for proverbs. So only when one advances in years, one comes to know the real meaning of proverbs and why they've existed through all the years. And it's only old people who have the value of proverbs, because they have seen it becoming real and they have lived it in their life. But for youth age, who have not seen the benefit of these proverbs, they do not have the value for all these traditions and proverbs, because they have not seen the actual use of these proverbs in their lifetime. This is the advantage of old age that Chesterton is talking about in his essay on the pleasures of no longer being very young. Thanks for now. In my next session, I'll be continuing with